This is Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner. Here today, Ainsley Earhart, Katie Pavlich, Fox News contributor and Red Eye regular, Joanne Nosachinski. And today's hashtag one lucky guy, host of Red Eye, so y'all know each other.
Oh, yeah.
And co-host of The Five, Greg Gutfeld. Greg is outnumbered.
Yay.
Yay.
Hooray.
Oh, wow, you're so mellow today.
It's kind of early for me, and I'm highly medicated. So let's get this show on the road.
All right, Joanne, good to have you here today.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And I said your name right. You had me practice and breathe in the green room, and
Yes.
I got it.
I gotta say, I tried to practice it a couple times yesterday, and I definitely didn't say it the
It's
right
spelled
way.
no such in ski.
Yes.
But
Yes.
say it for us.
No such in ski.
I love
That's how you say
I'm doing that for you.
Really
But
typical.
she rolled through it. She just went no such in ski.
Like
I
a
had
pro.
to.
The best way to remember it is, it's like a phrase Mel Brooks would use in a movie. Like,
Right.
no such ski.
All
That'll
right.
get it.
We got a lot of
got
news.
it.
Let's start with this. President Obama getting set to fly to Europe for meetings with some of Russia's neighbors and for a NATO summit. The commander-in-chief is coming under fire from both sides of the political aisle. Critics say the White House is being too tentative in the face of all the global threats. And there's this today. We have learned President Obama was briefed about the rise of al-Qaeda spin-off group ISIS more than 1 year before they raided parts of Iraq and Syria. And remember, they pretty much erased the border between those two countries now. And the heat the president is getting is not just from Republicans, but from senior members of his own party, with Intel Chair Senator Dianne Feinstein saying this about the president's approach to ISIS.
I think I've learned one thing about this president, and that is he's very cautious. Maybe in this instance, too cautious.
Here's an example. The president prefers the word incursion to invasion when it comes to Russia sending troops into Ukraine. Democrat Senator Robert Menendez, chair of the Foreign Relations Committee, has no such reservations about calling Russian actions what they really are.
This is a watershed moment. Thousands of Russian troops are here with tanks, missiles, heavy artillery, and are directly engaged in what is clearly an invasion.
And did you see this? Republican Senators John McCain and Lindsey Graham blasting the president's handling of the ISIS threat so far in an op-ed that was in the New York Times. Here's what they wrote, quote, continuing to confront ISIS in Iraq, but not in Syria, would be like fighting with one hand tied behind our back. We need a military plan to defeat ISIS, whatever it is. Wow. Talk about a watershed moment. Lots of them, Greg.
Yeah. I don't know if it's about being cautious. I think it's more about priorities. And with President Obama, foreign policy has never been a priority. It's always been about fixing the internal flaws of our country, which is why he's gotten all the problems reversed. He always looks at our country and the globe and thinks the globe is okay, but we got problems, when in fact we're probably the only force for good left in a very troubled and chaotic and changing world. He doesn't use forceful language in these conflicts, but he uses them with something like global warming. He doesn't parse any words with global warming, but by putting global warming before global terror, I've said this before, it's like worrying about dandruff when your hair's on fire. Terror will kill you tomorrow. Global warming, hypothetical computer models, whatever you believe in, is a long way off.
Well, we've heard lawmakers on both sides of the political aisle, Katie, saying that that terror that could kill you tomorrow could just buy a plane ticket to do it.
Well, and I think that's one thing that's been very much ignored, not just recently, but for a year. As we just saw, Catherine Herridge reports that the president has been briefed a year ago on the threat of ISIS. We've seen ISIS say, we're coming to America, just after they beheaded American journalist James Foley. They said, this is a message to America, and you had the State Department spokesperson then coming out and saying ISIS is not at war with America. And I think Dianne Feinstein gives President Obama too much credit when she says that he's being cautious. It's a lack of leadership, and it's also not making decisions that are very important. It's not that he's being cautious. He's out to lunch. He's out golfing immediately after he addresses a situation that we haven't seen in a very long time, with an American journalist losing his life. And then we saw even more reports that he probably could have done more to save the life of James Foley. So there are so many things that are compounding here, but the bottom line is the president, again, has done nothing to make sure that Americans feel they are safe at home from an attack from ISIS.
But wait, to be fair, we are bombing, which is more than what Cameron's doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, you got to give him that.
We're bombing. Maybe we'd made that decision the day before because we don't have a plan. We don't have a strategy. You know, I was in Minnesota last week, Friday, covering the Somalians that are being recruited to go and join these terrorist groups. And it's very, very scary because there are 100 of them in ISIS that are fighting with that organization, that terrorist organization, that are from America. So they have Western passports. Like you said, they're one plane ticket away from coming here to the U.S. We have to do something about it. They have to be confronted.
Well, and other countries are embracing this idea, too. I mean, they know, and obviously, I mean, geographically, Egypt and Jordan and some of those other countries are closer than we are, but they understand that ISIS is on the move, not just simply because they've said it, but because physically they are. Joanne, what are your thoughts?
Well, and we need a leader of all these countries. We need someone to just really take a stand and to really do something, because I think that gets the ball rolling. And I think that Obama needs to. I think so, yeah. We've always been strong before, and now we're really not. And it's just really sad. Obama's like a distracted house cat who's too lazy to actually catch a mouse.
Well,
exactly.
What about this, though, Katie? Because honestly, it's not just the president, it's Congress, too. I mean, where are they for the last 6 weeks? They're on vacation. You know, among the Democrats, there are some who are saying, well, you know what, maybe we need to get back to Washington, even Republicans, but they're not, though.
Sure, and I think that's a fair point, but you have to remember that before Congress went on recess, they actually talked about getting more sanctions pushed through. They were addressing this issue. You have Senator John McCain and Lindsey Graham writing this op-ed and saying they've been beating the drums for a long time on this. They've been saying, Senator Dianne Feinstein has been concerned about this. On Sunday, she said that ISIS is a major varsity team. Now we know that when President Obama was saying they were a JV team, he was actually being briefed on what a threat they were. Yeah. And going back to Ainsley's point, I think this is important too. Twice as many British Muslims are fighting in ISIS as they are fighting in the British military.
Two countries.
And so this is a very global issue for this one terrorist army. And I don't think the United States is taking it as seriously as they should be, considering that we haven't, yes, we've bombed a little bit, but if you take a look at the details of the bombing, we've taken out a couple trucks, haven't really done enough damage in terms of getting them to push back.
But he has done something, and we did take back, I mean, we allowed them to take back a city that had been under siege for 2 months. Emory, is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
Was taken back, and that was 2 months. I mean,
but that was mostly thanks to armed citizens who were helping the Iraqi forces.
I mean, that's been the plan, though. The plan has been to assist if we can and to put special forces on the ground. I
caution doesn't matter if at the end game is eradication. If he is allowing these things to happen, and we should actually expect more from Arab countries. We should. We shouldn't be doing this all on our own. Ultimately, we may have to. We may have to bomb them back to the Stone Age, which is apparently where they want to be.
Right,
ISIS prefers the 7th century, so we can help them there. But we also have to realize that there are a lot of people complaining right now that should be doing something. If you look at the Arab nations, they're the ones that are constantly complaining, why don't you get it? Why don't you go after them? And ultimately, that would be the best thing. In order to tame an ideology or domesticate the extremism on your own side, it has to come from you.
Two things. One, we know that a U.S. drone has taken out who they believe was the leader of the guy who led the group, that al-Qaeda spinoff who led the group in the Kenyan Mall massacre last September. So that was announced just today, al-Shabaab. And then just kind of further your point, I mean, in their op-ed, McCain and Graham said, look, we have a list of things, and part of their strategy was to call on those Sunni-led governments and to do that by backing up the new government in Iraq to show that, you know, that they could tip a hat to Sunnis and Shia, too. So we'll see. The Obama administration is also taking heat over what this looks like. And by this, I mean, well, take a look. What is he thinking or doing? Secretary of State John Kerry spent Labor Day kiteboarding in Nantucket. He likes to do that sort of thing. He says it makes him look like every man. I don't know, Greg, do you do this? The same day that he was doing this, Iraq forces reportedly fought to liberate several Sunni villages from ISIS's grip. Now remember, I mentioned the Sunnis are some who were going to stand beside and bring them into the conversation if we're going to go forward, according to Senators Graham and McCain. Congress has come under similar criticism now. Congressman John Larson says a Democrat from Connecticut, called out his colleagues on the Hill by saying, quote, Congress has been off for more than 6 weeks. Some have said, and I can't disagree with them, that we're AWOL. We ought to be back there, end quote. Ainsley?
You know, you've heard the saying, dress for the job you want, not the one you have. Clearly our president, our secretary of state, our vice president are dressing in bathing suits and golfing gear and bicycle exercising outfit. Is that the job that they want? It appears to be that way. That's the message we're sending other countries. That's the message they're sending their constituents. And as far as Congress is concerned, the vacay is over. Come on, guys, get it together. Everyone in the executive branch and the congressional branch, they need to be in Washington. They need to get a job done. Our country country is facing a lot of crisis right now.
But what is you want Kerry to wear a three-piece suit while he's kiteboarding?
And maybe a tie? Should we put a tie on the president?
Is it not fair to? I mean, everybody deserves their personal freedom.
When was that picture taken? Yesterday? Labor Day?
Over the weekend.
It's Labor Day. Give him a break.
Okay, but let's go back, though, and take a look at John Kerry's history with this sort of thing. Remember when Egypt was falling apart in 2013 and he was out yachting in Nantucket, and then the State Department lied about him? They denied that he was out there. Then these photos surfaced of him doing it, and then they said, well, he was out there briefly, and don't worry, he was working. It's a pattern of behavior, and look, when you don't look like you want to be a leader, when you don't put things aside, and as Greg, you said, priorities, it becomes a problem. And I think the most important thing here to stress is the United States has a very clear American interest when it comes to the march of ISIS. This isn't just about the other Arab countries and Iraq falling apart. This is about American passports being used, Western passports being used. There's a report out today showing that the State Department has just lost track of 6,000 student visas. They don't know where 6,000 students are. The 9/11 hijackers were here purposely on expired student visas. And so there is a very important American interest here to keep Americans safe because the threat here is real.
And Greg, to your point, it is Labor Day, and he needs to get to work. Say that to James Foley's parents.
Okay. No, but I think that the optics here are great, though. I have to say, they look athletic. Between the golf and the kite surfing, is that what that's called? No, but really, they're showing off their muscles, and I mean, 5 over par is really something that's going to threaten our enemies.
I mean, as funny as that is, I can't imagine our enemies not laughing too.
Well, and as Ainsley just mentioned, James Foley's parents, parents of military members who were in Iraq fighting, who now feel like that's been lost. The translators that were there, some of the people that I know that were over there, who feel like a lot has been lost and President Obama hasn't done enough to preserve what the hard work they had there is worth. And I think that taking a look at that as a joke, and there are people who have serious concerns about an attack here at home. The Kenyan Mall assassination and that massacre is a serious thing that could happen here. And I think that they need to make Americans feel more comfortable about taking the situation seriously.
But I got to add one thing. It is important to point out that the priorities are screwed up, but when you start using these cheap jokes about what people wear, that hurts your argument. You got to stick to the serious problems there. This is a bad president who is failing in leading the country. But the more you focus on his golf or you focus on what somebody's wearing on the beach, it actually belittles your argument.
I'm not sure I agree with that. I think that the optics.
That's what's great about this country, Katie.
Okay. And you can imagine how interesting the commercial break's going to be. And if it's really good, we'll tell you about it after. Well, when it comes to politics, the president is also apparently taking it very slow, using what some people are calling a do-no-harm strategy for the midterms that could include delaying action on a very pressing issue. We'll tell you about it. And you may have heard about all those leaked naked photos of celebrities. Well, the FBI is now in the case of how those pictures may have been hacked off the cloud. So many of us normal people are asking, how does the cloud work anyway? Is it safe? But no matter what, there's one way to make sure that the racy pics maybe you're taking never go public. Greg, here you go.
Terrified.